Well,
everybody.
hello.
Long time no talk on the podcast.
I know we talk a lot, just not necessarily things that we record and share with the general public. So,
That's
what are we
right.
going to talk about today, Leanne?
Oh, shit. Well, one of the questions that keeps coming up that people keep asking us, and I think that people really are struggling with this, is how do I set up my lesson planning for a play-based curriculum? So that's the big question. Like, how do I plan if I'm going to do play-based? And I have to have a curriculum set up, and I have to have my lesson plans submitted to my director or to someone. So how do I set that up? So I think that's what I think, is a good topic for today.
I'd
What
like
do you
to
think?
even I'd like to even flip it to say, how can I be play-based, which I know is best for kids, and
Hmm.
still have to conform to, planning, documentation, lesson plans
Assessment,
and curriculum and assessments and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
right? Yep.
Um, Yeah, I had somebody ask me that same question the other day. So isn't that funny? And it wasn't the same person that you talked to. So I guess
Hmm.
it's important.
Yeah, and I think that's the big struggle because we know that if you are facilitating and you are meaning putting out great materials for kids and things that interest them, and you are assessing, so you're documenting, you're writing things down, and you're keeping track of things that way, it makes your life a lot easier to do that than to be planning, ahead in 3 months, let's do this. And, in September, you're saying in April, let's do insects. It's just like, it doesn't make sense because you don't know what the kids' interests are going to be. So in that sense, we're going to make it easier on you, I think, because you're
And
not having
I
to
think that
plan.
would be the thing to think about is if and guilty as charged. When I first started teaching, I
Hmm.
relied on the calendar. And I relied on holidays or themes or whatever it was. So September was the apples and all that kind of stuff. If you're doing that, that's limiting you, and that is not going to be play based because it's going to be what you're thinking about doing. So free yourself from that. Goodbye, monthly or weekly kind of
Yep.
follow what the calendar does. Kids don't pay attention to that stuff. They don't need that. They're interested in the here and now. So, and I think if you talk to real play gurus and look at play research, they're going to say the adults need to kind of step out of it and let the
Hmm.
children play, like literally let the children play. So, if that's the case, then what's your role, and what should you be
Yep.
spending your time on, and what's meaningful as a teacher and as a researcher and as a guide and, as a documenter and all that good stuff.
And I will also say that if someone's saying to you, I need your lesson plans for the next month or the next 3 months or whatever it is, or for the year, which is crazy when you think about it, you need to step back and think about how you're going to respond to that too. What are you going to say and how are you going to plan? Maybe you can say, these are some of the skills I'm going to try working on, and I'm going to do, provide and facilitate experiences for kids to be able to work on all these skills. But to actually know, what the topic's going to be or where it's going, it just doesn't make sense. That's not what's best for kids. So, yeah.
100% agree with you. None of us know what I love when it's like, oh, you have to make your mammogram appointment for a year from now. I'm like, what? Oh, your 6 month dental checkup. I have no idea what I'm going to be doing 6 months from now. What makes us
Right.
think that we know what kids are going to be interested in even 6 days or 6 minutes or 6 hours from now?
Hmm.
I think that's a really valid point. And maybe if we think about this in the way that we witnessed when we were in Reggio Emilia, Italy. Um, I have to
I
stop and
know.
pause and think about that. But when we were in Reggio, it became apparent that teachers spend their time on different things than what we spend our time on typically in the United States of America. Do
Hmm.
you think that's fair to say?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's kind of flipped. So I think here in the United States, we spend a lot of time on the planning piece of like, okay, this is what we're doing in April, this is what we're doing in May. Whereas I think with Reggio, one of the key takeaways for me was that teachers look at what kids are interested in, they put out the materials, and then what they do is they do a lot of assessment and they write down a lot of the documentation of what kids were interested in, what they were talking about. And then the planning goes from there. That's when they say, okay, this is what the kids like, or this is something I noticed that they could use some work on, or, I'd really like to see them do more scissor work or, glue stuff. So I'm going to put out things that they're interested in where they can use scissors and where they can use glue and all those types of things. So it's kind of flipped. Instead of doing all this planning beforehand, they're doing the planning after the day's over, after the week's over, and
Yeah.
that's how they're planning.
makes it much
Yeah.
more authentic, and it really does make it much more individualized. So I think we know that programs call themselves kind of developmentally appropriate or individualized curriculum or creative or play based or whatever name you want to put on things. But if you really want to be play based, then the lead comes from the children. And you start your planning by observing. You start your planning by documenting. You start your planning by kind of really paying attention, listening, watching, observing. Then you sit and you say, okay, so this is what happened with the Play-Doh and feathers or whatever it is.
Hmm.
I saw the kids going to get feathers and they were sticking them in the Play-Doh and they were doing this and that. And they were talking about, I don't know, they were talking about birds and the nest that they found or something. What do I add to that? How do I bring that to another step for them? So what do I put out to invite them or provoke them, as the Reggio folks would say, a provocation for them to say, oh, look at that. So maybe there's some yarn and maybe there's some twigs and maybe there's some other things. And you also might just ask the kids,
I was
what
just
else
gonna
do you need?
say, you know what's even easier? Like, what do you want to know more about? Or what do you want to
Yeah,
work on? And just
yeah.
ask
Is
them
there
and take it
anything
from
I can
there.
get for you to help you with what you're working on here? That, and I think for teachers, you feel like, well, I'm not teaching if I'm just sitting and watching and observing and writing things down. I should be talking with the kids and engaging. And yeah, to a point, but you really
Mhm.
want to try to stay out of their play to let them be the ones who are truly leading it. So
Yeah.
what do
Kathy,
programs need to do?
I had a conversation with someone just yesterday, actually, and we were talking about it, and she was talking about how she kept using the word just, and we say all the time, just has no place in early childhood. Um,
JUST. Yeah.
yeah, and it was funny because she kept saying, but if they just let them finger paint, it's just a finger painting. Like I feel like I need to turn it into something, or I need to do something so people look at me like I'm a professional, I'm a teacher. And I said to her, take that just out of it's just a finger painting, or it's just, a creation that they made.
Or they're just playing,
Exactly, because
right?
as a teacher, your job is to watch what they're doing, see what they're doing, ask them, how can you expand on this? What do you want to do more? So ask those important questions, not the drill and kill questions. What color is this? What shape is this? Not those types of questions, but the real important questions, and then take it from there. But it is funny because I really do believe that so many early childhood educators are competing, and I say this sincerely, competing with elementary school teachers. In fact, they're saying to themselves, like, I need to make myself look more professional, or I need to look like a real school teacher or something like that. But just like Carol Garabedian Murray says, it's so much more about the caretaking and being a caregiver when we're talking about early childhood. And that's your role so much more than having a pointer and pointing to this and what is this color, what is that shape, what is this and what is that. Kids will learn those things if you give them the opportunities, and you facilitate the things that they're working on, and you add to it and you expand on it and all that good stuff. But I think that that's a challenge. And I think when we say, we're a play-based curriculum, well, what are you doing all day? You just sitting there watching them? Absolutely not. Look at what I'm writing. Look at what I'm jotting down. This is the information I got about this child today. This is, other information I got about them as a group and that type of stuff. That's the important chunk and piece of it. And so much of that is missing, I think, in the United States. We're so much more worried about getting the picture for the app. We're so much more worried about, making sure that mom is happy with the receipt and the piece of crap activity that you send home and those types of things. We need to
It's
focus
true.
more on the kids. Yeah.
So if we all agree with that, and if every teacher out there in hearing distance to us agrees, but their administrator or their owner or their director or their co-teacher isn't on board, or they say, well, that's
Hmm.
all well and good, but you need to fill in every square on your lesson plan for the week.
Hmm.
Um, I think we need to think about that. And
I,
one of the
I'll say right. I'll say really quickly, and I'm interrupting you like I always do, but I'll say really quickly, now is the time to make your change and to go wherever you want to go and go to a program that fits what your philosophy and belief is, because everyone is desperate for early childhood folks. So that's number one. I would say, re-look at the program you're working at and say to yourself, do I need to move on? Because if you're working in a program that doesn't have the same philosophy as you, job's not going to be as enjoyable and as satisfying as it should be, basically. But go ahead. Sorry.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, but I will also say I know there are some of you who can't leave or won't leave, or like your mom's the owner and and
Yeah.
she needs you, or you and your husband own the place together and there's different whatever it is, whatever your dynamic is. But
Hmm.
I say that to my students that I see a lot. I'll say, you can stay and change the place. You can work hard to try to change everybody's philosophy to be yours, or you can move on. So I get that. I do get that,
Hmm.
but not everybody's able to do that.
True.
But I think what I would recommend is that you say, instead of putting a lot of emphasis on the front end of your planning, put the emphasis on the middle and the back end of your planning. So let's say you have a lesson plan form that you have to use every week or whatever it is, right? And let's say your form has 5 days on it and it's got some boxes or some categories or domains of development or areas of your classroom or whatever it is, however it's set up. Maybe at the beginning, like on Sunday night, you look at it and you say, yeah, you know what? I noticed on Friday the kids were really tuned into this and this and this. So maybe you've got a few things on there on Monday that you present or that you use as an invitation or a provocation. But the rest of the week is kind of empty. Or maybe you're going to the library one day, or that, you know, Mr. Bongo is coming in to play the drums with the kids or something. I don't know,
Mr.
whatever it is.
I
Mr.
want to meet,
Bongo's
wait,
coming.
I want to meet Mr. Bongo.
Well, of course you do, but I am not sharing Mr. Bongo with anybody. But but let's say Mr. Bongo is coming in. The things are going to happen, you plug in, and maybe you type it up like that, or maybe you write it in blue pen or whatever it is that you do. And then as the day goes on, so at the end of the day, Monday, you sit, or during the day, you reflect and you say, the kids played with this so much. We need to have that there Tuesday. Or you talk to your co-teacher. What did you notice? How did you do it? So you're adding. It's like a living document or a
Hmm.
working document. It's not this finalized thing that's like stamped and hardcore. You have to do this. And somebody comes into your classroom and it's 10:30 on Wednesday and they say, well, you're supposed to be talking about, you know, Mr.
Right.
Bongo right now. You say, oh, well, the kids were more interested in Mrs. Fluffernutter or whatever it is. So
Hmm.
you go with their interest. And then by the end of the week, you might have a pretty full form because you've written down things that the kids have chosen to do. You've written down things that happened kind of spontaneously. And then you use that to assess and document and share with families. This is what we've talked about today. And this is what the kids learned while they were doing this finger painting. And this is why it's important, and
Hmm.
so forth and so on. So
Yep.
that's what I would suggest, that you can have documented, thoughtful, engaging lessons that are led by children's interests. And you just
Hmm.
have to flip the way that you currently plan and the way that you see yourself as a teacher to be a
Hmm.
little bit different.
Yeah. And if you
So
back off a bit, and instead of doing the drill and kill and what color is this? What shape is this? Well, whatever. Um, and if you're documenting and you're writing down things that the children are saying, things that you're noticing about them, maybe you're noticing, that they're having trouble with something, you can jot those things down. And that's going to be your living, like you said, the living document that you're following and that you're keeping track of. And that's what's guiding you as
yep.
teacher. And I
And
also
I'll
want to
tell you,
say,
oh, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, I think that play-based curriculum is so important because kids extend on that play. It's not just one and done. We've talked about this a lot lately. It's not just, oh, yep, you did it. Okay, put it in your cubby. They
Yep.
keep building on the play. They keep building on what they're working on. And that's so important because the one and done stuff doesn't help anyone. It doesn't build your creativity. It doesn't make you think about something when you go home. It doesn't extend it where you're thinking, oh, you know what? That would be good for my block structure I'm working on. It's that type of stuff. You're missing out on that. It's just one and done. No process, no thinking, nothing. It's the creativity's shot. Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely true. I don't know what I was going to say, but
Oh, sorry. I keep
no,
interrupting
no,
you.
no, don't. It's not you. It's my age. Guys, don't get old because you all of a sudden forget stuff that was like right there on the tip of your tongue and in the front of your brain. You forget things. But yeah, I think that we just need to rethink what planning is and who are we planning for, and
Mm,
why are we planning for them when they can plan for themselves. And I just remembered what I was going to say, that if you would, I'll use myself when I was teaching, and I would fill in my lesson plan every Thursday afternoon for the following week. I would get my lesson plan ready, and I'd sit with my co-teacher and we'd be sitting there. What are we going to do for science on Tuesday? And what are we going to do for this on Friday? And
hmm
you know, I remember that. And I remember sometimes just saying, just write something in there so that it's in, you know? And that's when you get into trouble, I think, because I think that's when you try to make your art fit a theme or a scheme. And art should be art for art's sake, you know, and outdoor
Mhm.
playtime doesn't always have, it can be, you can do some planning for outdoor playtime, but it doesn't need to be a prescribed, you know, this is what the teacher thinks you should do or what they'll bring outside. So I would use the document a little differently. And I would really think about what you need and think about individual children and think about things. But remember, you don't have to have something different every day. I don't
Mhm.
know about you, but if I was 4 years old, I'd want to hear Pete the Cat's groovy shoes more than
Mhm.
once. You know, I'd want to hear that a few times that week. I
Yeah.
might want to paint with the same things a few different times in different ways, or maybe use different materials. So when we do that pre planning, we're often changing it up all the time, like thinking, oh, we need to have, you know, 45 activity ideas or whatever it is, when maybe
Mhm.
you only need to have a few different things and then see where it leads, you know, see where it goes. And lots of repetition because that's how the kids learn. And that's how, as we all know, but that's how their brain develops and the hardwiring in their brain and those synapses firing happen through repetition and repeated use of things. So don't be afraid of that. And if your supervisor says, well, your lesson plan has something on it, you know, 3 different times, you say, yep, and this is why, you know, justify it and back
Mhm.
yourself up and don't be afraid to know your children well and to share what you know about them with people outside of
Absolutely.
your realm.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
And again, when you think about the play-based curriculum, it's geared towards kids. It is, looking at them and what their interests are. It's also being a great facilitator, meaning putting out good materials, meaning loose parts and things that children are going to be interested in and just going with it. And again, we talked about this the other day at one of our trainings. Maybe Monday you put out shaving cream and they're playing with the shaving cream and they're having a blast with it. And then maybe Tuesday you put out, combs. And maybe Wednesday, you notice they're doing the combs and they did the combs and they love the combs. You're going to put the combs out again on Wednesday. And maybe Thursday when it's out, you're noticing they're not really interested in it. So you're going to give them some pool noodle pieces and they're going to build with pool noodle pieces with the shaving cream. So that one idea of using shaving cream just keeps getting extended. And like you said, more synapses are being, connected and formed because they had this experience with shaving cream that was so involved rather than just,
And
oh, we did
I
shaving
can
cream on
tell you
Monday.
right now, somebody's listening right now saying, we can't use shaving cream. You know, my licensor said we can't, or my director said it's toxic, or whatever it is. And we're
Hmm.
just going to come and tell you that the warning sign on shaving cream is the same sort of toxic warning that's on toothpaste. So, you know, you're not going to let a child squeeze a tube of toothpaste down their throat, and you're not going to let a child take the shaving cream like whipped cream and squirt it into their mouth. You're going to, you know, be there to make sure everything's okay. So please don't panic about shaving cream. It's a really wonderful resource. And
Hmm.
it's, you
Yeah.
can get it at the dollar store, the
Hmm.
buck and a quarter store. Um,
Absolutely.
and, you know, but hopefully this helps a little bit.
Yep.
And remember, all the current really good solid research about what's best for kids focuses on play. It's not focused on testing and assessment and a thematic curriculum or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's focused on
Do
children's
not.
ability to know what they need.
Yeah, don't waste your money on boxed curriculum, give the money towards a luncheon for your teachers, use the money towards, loose parts that you can collect and use
Are
and,
you kidding me?
good
Get
stuff.
yourself a bottle of wine, go to the spa, put your feet up, get a massage. That's what you use the money for.
Right.
Um,
Skip the
that's
box
what That's
curriculum.
what Leanne would use the money for, and
Yeah,
I would go
you
with
know.
her. So
There you go. All right. I think
let them play.
let them play. Let them play. Play is the curriculum for sure. I love it.
Love it.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.